4 countries, 4 women, one shared theme of courage and tragedy. These women didn't just make history, they changed it, and their stories ended in tragedy. This video is the result of hours of research into the lives and legacies of 4 groundbreaking female leaders. First female prime minister and the first elected female leader of a Muslim nation anywhere. Benazir Bhutto. Benazir was born into a politically active family in Karachi. Her grandfather was a feudal lord that helped pave the way for Pakistan to become an autonomous state for South Asian Muslims. Her father, Zulfikar Bhutto, served as president of Pakistan, and in 1973 became the nation's first democratically elected prime minister. So Benazir was exposed to the world of politics from a very early age. In college, she went on to study government and law at Harvard and Oxford. This is where she began shaping her own worldview, one that focused on democratic principles, liberalization, and women's rights.
If the Pakistan People's Party was given a chance, we would naturally take measures, socio-economic measures, which we feel would be for the well-being of our people. We would concentrate on economics, we would concentrate on literacy, and we would try to mend the mistakes of the military regime and build bridges which can take our people on to a better society, a happier society, where there are fundamental human rights and a person has self-respect and dignity.
After graduating from Oxford in 1977, Benazir returned home to Pakistan. Her father was still the prime minister, but not for long. In July of that year, a military general, Mohammad Zia al-Haq, who was appointed by her father, staged a coup and declared martial law. He placed Zulfikar Bhutto under arrest and his family under house arrest. The general became president and by many accounts turned the government into a brutal military dictatorship. In 1979, things got even worse. The former Prime Minister Bhutto was convicted of ordering the murder of his political opponents, accusations his party and family still deny. He was hanged by the government in April of 1979. Benazir, 26 years old at the time, and her mother both continued to fight for democracy after his death. But it would be a long-fought battle. Her mother became the new leader of the Pakistan People's Party. They focused their attention on calling out the military government while creating their own political platform. In 1984, after being detained several times, Benazir returned to the United Kingdom, where she became the party's leader in exile. 2 years later, she returned to Pakistan with clear goals in mind. She wanted the dictatorship that killed her father to come to an end, and she wanted free and fair elections to take place in Pakistan. She began campaigning for nationwide elections that year. As this was all happening in late 1987, she agreed to an arranged marriage to Asif Ali Zardari, and she stayed on the campaign trail. Then in August 1988, months before elections were held, a mysterious plane crash killed the nation's dictator, General Muhammad Zia. The unexpected event smoothed the way for the popular star to rise to power. The group selected Benazir to become the nation's next prime minister. The move was historic. She became not only the first female leader of Pakistan, but the first elected female leader of a Muslim nation anywhere. Her party promised to run the country on socialist principles and to improve the lives of women by repealing laws that restricted their freedom. But as Benazir quickly learned, gaining power and being in power were 2 different challenges. Although her party won a majority of seats in parliament, they still faced a significant conservative opposition that made legislative moves difficult. Her government wasn't able to pass any legislation in the first 14 months in office, other than a budget. On top of not being able to deliver on her campaign promises, her party's government stank of corruption scandals. After coming to power, one of the PPP's first acts was to bribe and threaten legislators in Punjab to target Bhutto's main opposition, Nawaz Sharif. Sirleaf was a government official who had close ties to the former dictatorship. Remember that name. Accusations of corruption also swept through her cabinet, and were even made against her husband, who became known as Mr. 10%, for allegedly extorting that percentage from people seeking to do business with the government. Only 2 years after coming to power, Bhutto's government was dismissed by the president over alleged rampant corruption, and her husband spent 2 years in prison. Her opponent, Nawaz Sharif, who I mentioned earlier, campaigned on an anti-corruption platform and became prime minister after her dismissal. For the most part, she managed to hold on to her popularity, even as she defended herself from misconduct charges in court. But in 1993, she would get her chance again. Prime Minister Sharif was dismissed for his own corruption scandals that year, and Benazir once again became Prime Minister of Pakistan, this time by a much thinner margin. She didn't have a working majority in the parliament, and again was still unable to achieve much, even in her second term. She also had to significantly raise taxes in the country to repay its huge debt to the International Monetary Fund. The tax increases made the public discontent. Then another corruption scandal involving her husband shook her administration. In 1996, she was dismissed from office, and Nawaz Sharif, the former prime minister, became prime minister again. Bhutto left Pakistan on self-imposed exile as she faced corruption charges. In 1999, while still away from Pakistan, she was convicted and sentenced to 3 years in prison. During this time, another military coup ousted Prime Minister Sharif. General Pervez Musharraf became the new leader of Pakistan. According to experts, another brutal dictatorship had established itself. After the September 11th attacks in 2001, the dictatorship became an ally to the US's war on terror. But as the years went on, Musharraf faced pressure from the US and others to restore democracy in Pakistan. Meanwhile, another opportunity had presented itself to Benazir. In 2007, the general signed an amnesty deal that would allow Benazir to return to Pakistan after more than 8 years in exile. She was seen as the West's favorite candidate to restore democracy in the country, but because of her support for the US's war on terror and her liberal positions, she became a target in her own country. Upon her return, a suicide bomber attacked her homecoming rally. Nearly 140 people were killed in the attack, but Bhutto managed to survive. Bhutto remained defiant and continued to campaign for democracy despite the threat. But she didn't survive too much longer. After leaving a rally, Bhutto emerged from the top of her bomb-proof vehicle to wave to supporters. Moments later, she was shot at close range, and then a bomb went off. She was taken to the hospital, but later died from her wounds. Mystery has surrounded her death nearly a decade later. There have been many conspiracy theories. Benazir Bhutto led for a period of 5 years in total and was assassinated at the age of 54. Following Benazir Bhutto, we then transition to the life of Prime Minister, who was assassinated by her own security guards. She was an Indian stateswoman, and to date, the only female Prime Minister of India, Indira Gandhi. She was born on November 19, 1917, in Allahabad, India. Her father's name was Jawaharlal Nehru, and mother's name was Kamala Nehru. Her father was independent India's first prime minister, and mother was a freedom fighter. She attained her preliminary education at home, then attended school to complete her matriculation. Indira was enrolled at the Viswa Bharati University in Calcutta, but had to leave due to the ailing health of her mother in Europe. Post the death of her mother, Indira attended University of Oxford in Britain, where she studied history, political science, and economics. However, due to her constant ill health, she returned to India without completing her degree. She got married to Faraz Gandhi on March 26, 1942. They got 2 sons, named Rajiv Gandhi and Sanjay Gandhi. After the death of her father in 1964, Indira Gandhi was appointed as a member of the Rajya Sabha. She also became one of the members of Lal Bahadur Shastri's cabinet, serving as the Minister of Information and Broadcasting. After the death of Lal Bahadur Shastri, Indira Gandhi became the Prime Minister of India in January 1966. During her term as Prime Minister, Gandhi brought about a radical change in the country's economic, political, international, and national policies. She included the nationalization of 14 major commercial banks: coal, steel, copper, refining, cotton textiles, and insurance industries. She even nationalized the oil companies after the 1971 war against Pakistan, when India faced oil crises. In 1971, Gandhi supported the East Pakistan in the Pakistan Civil War, which led to the formation of Bangladesh-Pakistan War. Gandhi also brought social reforms by introducing clauses in the Indian Constitution related to wages, equal pay for equal work, to both men and women. After the 1971 elections, the opposition parties accused her of using unlawful methods and electoral fraud to win the elections. Allahabad High Court found Gandhi guilty. On June 1975, the court declared the elections null and void and unseated Indira Gandhi from the Lok Sabha. Additionally, she was banned from contesting for the next 6 years. Following internal crises and strikes, President Fakhreddin Ali Ahmed declared a state of emergency. This emergency lasted for 21 months, beginning in June 1975 and ending in March 1977. During this period, Gandhi was granted the authority to rule by decree. Gandhi subsequently extended the state of emergency twice before the elections in March 1977. The election results dealt a significant blow to the Congress Party, which secured only 153 seats. Both Indira Gandhi and her son, Sanjay Gandhi, lost their parliamentary seats. Subsequently, they were arrested on charges of conspiring to eliminate opposition leaders during the emergency period. However, the following year, Indira Gandhi won a seat in the Lok Sabha, the lower house of parliament. By 1980, she had made a political comeback and returned to power as Prime Minister. A tragic event known as Operation Blue Star took place. In this operation, the Indian Army entered Amritsar's Golden Temple, the holiest Sikh shrine, to flush out separatists residing in the premises. While successful in its intended objectives, it caused great damage to the temple and killed anywhere between a few hundred to 1,000 Sikh civilians. This enraged Sikhs worldwide, who saw Blue Star as an assault on their faith. The Prime Minister, who had ordered the operation, bore the brunt of the blame. Following Blue Star, Indira's security was beefed up. Although she rejected transferring her security over from the police to the army, commandos from the Indo-Tibetan Border Police were added to her protection team. Security around her family, especially her grandchildren, were increased. However, she refused to remove Sikhs from her protection detail. Around 9:10 a.m. on the morning of October 31, 1984, Indira Gandhi emerged from her official residence at New Delhi's Subdarjung Road. She was headed for her personal office in the adjoining bungalow at Wanakpur Road. She was accompanied by Constables Naren Singh and Rameshwar Dayal, her personal secretary R.K. Dhawan, and her domestic help Natharam. As she walked down the garden path, Sub-Inspector Biyan Singh, a longtime member of Indira Security, detailed came forward. Constable Satwan Singh, a new recruit, was standing a few paces away. Unknowingly, he would fire 4 shots at point-blank range. Satwan Singh emptied his 30-round Sten gun clip at Indira Gandhi. The firing lasted about 25 seconds, during which Indira Gandhi collapsed to the ground. Constable Dayal tried to lunge at the gunman and was shot in the thigh. After the shooting ended, both Ben Singh and Satwan Singh dropped their weapons and were quickly overpowered by Narendra Singh and a group of ITBP commandos who had arrived on the scene. Indira Gandhi's limp body was rushed to the hospital. After a 4-hour-long surgery during which doctors attempted to perform a miracle, she was declared dead at 2:23 p.m. Ben Singh was shot dead while in custody shortly after the assassination. Satwant was hanged 5 years later along with co-conspirator Kehar Singh. We'll explore the story of another female iconic leader who faced both triumphs and trials, Sheikh Hasina Mujeeb. Sheikh Hasina Mujeeb was first sworn in as Prime Minister in 1996. But even then, she understood Bangladesh's turbulent politics better than most. As the daughter of Sheikh Mujib Rahman, who was considered the country's founding father, her history was closely intertwined with that of her homeland. Sheikh Hasina was born in 1947. Back then, there was no Bangladesh. It was East Pakistan. She was born in a place called Gopalganj near Dhaka. She was the eldest of 5 children. By now, her father was an established politician. It had a downside, though. Sheikh Mujib was in jail a lot. The children saw very little of him. Once a friend asked Hasina, "How do you address your father? What do you call him?" The young Hasina had no answer. She realized that she hardly had the chance. Sheikh Mujib was in jail from 1949 to 1952. Even afterwards, the government always targeted him. Like in 1954, another arrest. Then in 1958, another one. And these experiences shaped Hasina's politics. From a young age, she rejected Pakistan. In school, her class had a subject called social knowledge. One chapter was about Ayub Khan, Pakistan's military dictator. When the exam came, Hasina ditched her textbook. She wrote what her father had told her about Pakistani dictators. The teacher failed her. In a later exam, she skipped all questions on Pakistan. She lost some 20 marks, but Hasina says it was about principle. And this continued in college. She emerged as a popular student leader in college, first as vice president of the union at Eden College, then as union member of Dhaka University. In between, she also got married to a nuclear scientist named M.A. Wazid Mia. At this point, the Bangladesh movement had gathered strength. A mass uprising was organized in 1969. Hasina also took part in it. Sheikh Mujib had been imprisoned by Pakistan, so Hasina was his contact with the outside world. The next thing that happened was the 1971 Liberation War. With the help of India, West Pakistan's army was defeated and a new country was born, the country of Bangladesh. Hasina also became a mother during this tumultuous time. Her son was born in 1971, her daughter was born the next year, so things were going well. Her father was president, the country was slowly being built. That's when Hasina decided to join her husband in Germany. In 1975, Mujiba, as the acting president, was assassinated along with most of his family in a military coup. Hasina was abroad at the time. Years later, she was elected to lead her father's Awami League party and allowed to return to Bangladesh. In 2004, as leader of the opposition, Hasina was speaking to thousands of supporters at a rally when grenades were thrown into the crowds. The attack killed dozens of people. Hasina was injured but survived. In total, she's said to have survived 19 assassination attempts. In 2007, she was arrested and charged with extortion and the murder of 4 people killed during political demonstrations and unrest. But she was cleared and later re-elected several more times as prime minister. The longer she stayed in power, the more Hasina was accused of becoming increasingly authoritarian. With many opposition members arrested or tried, her government was repeatedly accused of cracking down on dissent and freedom of expression. In 2017, during Hasina's 3rd term as prime minister, a crackdown by Myanmar's military against Rohingya Muslims, which led to hundreds of thousands of Rohingya fleeing to neighboring Bangladesh. In the early days of the crisis, Hasina visited a refugee camp in Cox's Bazar expressing sympathy and solidarity. During her leadership, Sheikh Hasina was credited with overseeing both rapid social development and economic growth. In a country that's home to more than 170 million people, but critics and opposition leaders said the growth favored the country's wealthier classes. After Bangladesh's ruling alliance won virtually every parliamentary seat in the country's general election in 2019, Sheikh Hasina became prime minister for a fourth time, a record indeed. She promised to continue to develop Bangladesh's economy, but also attacked her rivals, the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, or BNP. In 2023, opposition supporters took to the streets to demand Hasina's resignation and for her not to contest the 2024 election. Sheikh Hasina is indeed the world's longest-serving female head of state. You cannot deny Bangladesh's rise on her watch, but you can question her methods to achieve this growth. What did she do wrong? Well, Hasina ruled Bangladesh with an iron grip. The opposition was under arrest. Parties were disqualified from contesting elections. Dissent was not tolerated. Institutions were captured. Media was controlled. Her rule took an authoritarian turn. The January elections this year made it evident. Sheikh Hasina won, but without any real competition, as the opposition boycotted the election. Bangladesh's economic growth, largely driven by the garment sector, faced significant challenges during the pandemic. Inflation soared, reaching nearly 9.5% by November last year, the highest in decades. Meanwhile, foreign debt doubled and foreign exchange reserves dropped. This economic turmoil also led to anti-government sentiment. People blamed Hasina for all of it. Those cries became louder this summer. Dhaka plunged into turmoil over a job quota system because 56% of government jobs in the country were reserved. So thousands of people took to the streets, mostly students, protesting against this reservation. The Prime Minister called them traitors and terrorists. The protests spread. Bangladesh's top court scrapped the quota, most of it. So reservation was out. But the protest did not end, because it was no longer about the quotas now. It was about Sheikh Hasina and her government. And the way Hasina responded made it even worse. She remained defiant. She refused to engage and cracked down hard. Hundreds of people died. Many more were arrested. It was the bloodiest in the country's history. There were clashes between the police and the protesters. Close to 100 people were killed in a single day. Dhaka announced a nationwide curfew, but within hours, the people were back on the streets. They did not fear bullets anymore, and the military turned against the Prime Minister. They did not want to hold off civilians anymore. This left Sheikh Hasina with no choice. She could either flee and save herself or incur the wrath of her people. She did the obvious and fled to India. But it's hard to believe that she did not see it coming. In 1990, a student-led uprising ended military rule in Bangladesh, and Hasina was at the forefront of it. That's how she came to power. 3 decades later, Hasina is out of power, through students-led protest again. Sheikh Hasina led for a period of 20 years, making the world's longest female head of state ever in history, and was ousted at the age of 76. Then we turn to Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf is from a mixed family background with her father from Gola and a mother having a German ancestry. Because of her education in America, she's considered American librarian, but she has said countless times that she does not see herself in that light. She was appointed Assistant Ministerial of Finance in William Talbot's cabinet. She initiated brilliant policies that helped the country's economy. She resigned in 1973 from Talbot's administration after disagreeing with how the country's money was being spent. A military coup in 1980 overthrew the Talbot administration, leaving Johnson Sirleaf as one of the few high-ranking officials to not be executed. She briefly served in the new government, but continued her habit of speaking out against government mismanagement. Unfortunately, the new military dictatorship was less accepting of criticism, and she found herself at various times imprisoned and facing execution. She later fled the country. After moving to Washington, she worked for World Bank, and in 1981 moved to Kenya to serve as vice president of the African Regional Office of Citibank. In 1992, she was appointed director of the United Nations Development Program. Her interest in policies can be traced back to 1985, when she returned to Liberia to run as vice president with Jackson Doe under Liberian Action Party. By August, she was placed under house arrest and, after later, sentenced to 10 years in prison for sedition. After found guilty of insulting members of the Samyadu government, but she was released following an outcry from the international community. She was stopped from running for vice presidency and then opted for a Senate seat in Montserrat County. By 1989, Liberia's civil war started, and Sirleaf raised money to support Taylor's opposition against Doe. She founded National Patriotic Front of Liberia with Taylor and Tomwe Uyu because of the part she played in the war. Those governments suggested that she should be banned from Liberia politics for 30 years. Years later, she was against Taylor's hand in the war. In 1996, ECOWAS intervened in the country's crisis, and Sirleaf returned to contest in the country's 1997 general election under the Unity Party, and she came second in an election marked by irregularities. She made known her discretion about the results that favored Taylor and was accused of treason. She was sent on exile to Abidjan. In 2005, she contested for the presidency under the same Unity Party. She was second to George Y., but in the runoff, she emerged winner. Her inauguration had to be delayed because Y rejected the results. But after investigations, she was inaugurated as the first female president in Liberia and Africa. And in 2010, she ran for second tenure, which sparked criticism from some supporters. But by 16th of January 2012, she was sworn into office for second term. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf's 12-year presidency is a tale of both triumph and disappointment. On one hand, she secured a lasting peace after the collapse of the previous dictatorship, expanded access to basic education, and championed women's rights. Her financial acumen brought substantial debt relief and foreign investment to Liberia, earning her a joint Nobel Peace Prize early in her tenure. However, her administration was heavily criticized for rampant corruption. High-ranking officials were frequently embroiled in bribery scandals, yet few were held accountable. Accusations of nepotism also tainted her leadership, particularly after she appointed 3 of her sons and her sister to key government positions. The collapse of the national oil company following her son's departure further damaged her legacy. Liberia's progress was further undermined by an economic downturn and a devastating Ebola outbreak. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf led for a period of 12 years and left office at the age of 79. To sum up all their years of leadership, all joined together, they led for a period of 52 years.